In 1908, a modest-looking automobile rolled onto American roads and quietly began reshaping the modern world. It wasn't the fastest car of its time, it wasn't the most luxurious, and it certainly wasn't the most advanced in appearance, but the Ford Model T would become the single most influential automobile in history. Before the Model T, cars were toys for the wealthy. Hand-built, expensive, and often unreliable, they were status symbols rather than practical machines. Most Americans still relied on horses, railways, or simply walking. Travel was slow, communities were local. The idea of ordinary families owning a personal vehicle seemed unrealistic. That changed when Henry Ford introduced the Model T in October 1908. Ford's vision was radical: build a car so affordable and durable that the average working family could own one. He didn't want to make cars for elites, he wanted to put the world on wheels. The Model T was designed with simplicity at its core. It had a lightweight yet strong vanadium steel chassis, a straightforward 20-horsepower engine, high ground clearance for rough rural roads, and mechanical parts that could be repaired with basic tools. It wasn't flashy, but it was dependable, and that was revolutionary. The early Model Ts came in several colors, though most people remember the famous black version. That black paint, introduced later for efficiency reasons, dried faster and helped speed production. This wasn't about style, it was about scale. The real revolution came not just from the car itself, but from how it was built. In 1913, Ford implemented the moving assembly line at his Highland Park plant in Michigan. Instead of skilled craftsmen building entire cars from start to finish, each worker performed one specific task as the vehicle moved down the line. It was a radical shift in manufacturing. Production time for a single car dropped from over 12 hours to about 90 minutes. Costs fell dramatically. In 1908, the Model T cost around $825, still expensive but competitive. By the 1920s, the price had dropped to under $300. Suddenly, factory workers, farmers, teachers, and shopkeepers could afford a car, and they bought them in staggering numbers. By 1918, half of all cars in America were Model Ts. By the time production ended in 1927, over 15 million had been sold worldwide, a record that would stand for nearly half a century. But the Model T did more than sell in large numbers. It changed how society functioned. Farmers who once depended on horse-drawn wagons could now travel to town in a fraction of the time. Doctors could reach patients in rural communities faster. Families could visit relatives miles away without planning an entire day around travel. Teenagers experienced independence in ways previous generations never had. The geography of daily life expanded. Roads began to improve because cars demanded better infrastructure. Gas stations appeared across the country. Motels emerged to accommodate travelers. Suburbs slowly began forming as people realized they no longer needed to live within walking distance of work. The Model T didn't just move people, it stretched cities outward. It also reshaped labor. Ford's factories became symbols of industrial efficiency, but Henry Ford introduced another groundbreaking idea in 1914, the $5 workday. At a time when many factory workers earned half that amount, Ford doubled wages for eligible employees. The goal was partly to reduce worker turnover, which was extremely high due to the repetitive nature of assembly line work, but it also created something unprecedented: workers who could afford the products they built. Ford employees could buy Model Ts. This cycle of production and consumption became a cornerstone of 20th century capitalism. Yet the Model T was not perfect. It was noisy, it was basic. Early models required drivers to learn unusual controls, including hand levers and pedals that operated differently from modern vehicles. There was no fuel gauge, no speedometer in early versions, no electric starter until 1919. Starting the engine required hand cranking at the front of the car, a process that could be physically demanding and occasionally dangerous. But owners didn't mind. The car was tough. It could handle mud, rocks, snow, and uneven rural terrain that would defeat many other early automobiles. Farmers even modified their Model Ts to power sawmills, water pumps, and agricultural equipment by using the engine as a stationary power source. It wasn't just a car, it was a machine for rural survival. Globally, the Model T spread beyond American borders. Assembly plants opened in Canada, England, Germany, Argentina, and elsewhere. The car became a symbol of American industrial strength and innovation. In many countries, it represented modernity itself. But success carries risk. By the mid-1920s, competitors like General Motors began offering cars in multiple colors, with more modern styling and features. Consumers who once valued affordability above all else began wanting comfort, aesthetics, and innovation. Ford resisted change. He famously insisted customers could have the Model T in any color so long as it is black. While this quote is often oversimplified, it reflected a deeper truth. Ford prioritized efficiency over variation. By 1927, sales declined sharply. After nearly 19 years of dominance, production of the Model T finally ended in May 1927. Ford shut down factories for months to retool for a new car, the Model A, which would replace it. When the final Model T rolled off the assembly line, an era ended. 15 million cars, 19 years of production, one machine that altered daily life more profoundly than almost any invention of its time. Today, surviving Model Ts are museum pieces and collector treasures. They appear in parades, historical reenactments, and automotive gatherings. When one putters down a road today, it feels slow and mechanical, almost fragile compared to modern vehicles. But in its time, it represented freedom. It represented possibility. It represented motion in a century defined by acceleration. The Ford Model T didn't just popularize the automobile, it transformed manufacturing through the assembly line, it altered wage structures, it influenced infrastructure development, it expanded personal mobility, it changed the rhythm of life itself. Before the Model T, the world was smaller. After it, distance felt conquerable. And while faster, more powerful, and more luxurious cars would follow, none would ever quite match the cultural impact of this simple black machine. The T proved that technology does not have to be extravagant to be revolutionary. Sometimes, all it needs to do is move.